Mgtow Millionaire, Lesson 11, Intuition. Welcome back. Thanks for dropping by to my little corner of the web. This is your host, Fokker Truman, and today we're going to talk about intuition and why it matters and why this is a way for you to analyze and test if your decision-making process should be more from your gut or should be strategized, systemized, and put into a logical context using SWOT as we spoke in the previous video. There was a co-worker of mine. He used to work in what was the loan department for the government. As I told before, I worked in South America. So in South America, the government also offers loans of any size, from getting a house, a car, a pet, to even a whole industry investment, in dairy products, leather, etc. It just varies, but it can go up to the millions. So you can ask for $10,000 and you can go up to 7 million to 25 million depending on your connections. Everything in South America is who you know more than what you know. Anyway, this co-worker of mine who was same level as me but in a different department, in charge of loans. He was really, really good and praised just by his bosses and everybody that knew him, including me, of his innate ability to choose people and to make the correct call on what was going to happen and how things worked. And I'll be honest, I was truly amazed at how things always pan out, most of the time, correct for him. He wasn't always right, but he was right most of the time. And that was a strange trait to have in the government in South America back in those days, and probably still is in any government in the world today. So I sat down one night after I knew him for about 16 months at the job, and I asked him, you're the magic man. And he was pretty drunk. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have talked to me. And I had introduced his future wife to him by sheer accident, and she's a friend of mine. So I think he's told me this as a thank you, but I'm going to share it with you now, guys. What happened, he says, how do you do to make the right choice of a program to follow, people to select? How do you hire your underlings and everybody for the program, etc.? Most of the time, you don't always hit it, but 90% of the time, you're always on point. How the heck do you do it? I said, well, intuition is really two things. You have done something for so long, years, decades, or intense hours of practice of anything, that you become so good at something that intuitively, since you practice it so much, you react and you do things on the fly without having to think of them anymore, because repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates harmony, and harmony creates perfection in the end. Not absolute perfection, because perfection cannot be attained, but you know what I'm trying to say. And the other thing with intuition is, it's not really intuition per se. It's the knowledge of worldly truths that are self-evident. And there's a saying in South America that says, think evil and you will be right. That basically means think the worst of people and you will be right most of the time. So think evil and you will be right. If you think the worst of people, you will be right. Don't expect the best of people, expect the worst. Those who expect the best in a rotten world are fools, he used to say. And I kind of agree with his sentiment, even if I don't like to accept the reality of our human nature in general. As I told you before, there were no saints in the government while I was working there, and that included me, so who am I to tell anybody to correct themselves? But going deeper into the intuition factor, he always thought around the idea when selecting personnel who had the right tools, the right proper background, how they handle things, how well they manage under stress. One of the keys, he said, is I hire married people, and South American marriage holds a little bit more weight, or holds a little bit more weight than in North America, Europe in general. It's not that girls or guys don't go sleeping around and things get dicey, but they still have some of what our previous generations had back in the day, stay and take the bullet for the kids. It matters. And South Americans still have that, they understand that it's important. Especially the South Americans that you don't know, the ones that work in government, in middle level jobs to high upper levels up to the president. They are not the South Americans that cross the border to work in the United States or in Europe or emigrate or whatever. They don't want to emigrate. They have money. They don't give a squat. And those type of people, which were the ones I was talking to and the ones I'm talking about, they understand the need to preserve marriage. So it's important, and they know it's a dance because, as he said, keeping a Latin American, a Latina, at peace, because giving her full happiness is impossible. Women change their minds too much. That was a chuckle, I remember. So he had to concentrate on people that he hired that had that degree of understanding of how to manage a relationship for 10 years or more. He automatically hired, it didn't matter if it were a woman or a man, but if they can manage a relationship of 10 plus years and have no divorce and have kids and still be competent at their jobs, they'll probably be all right. Even if they were evil and they were going to cheat and were going to play. He says, I assume that they're great at their jobs and dancing, I'm flexing because managing a marriage is just as hard as managing anything else in today's society. And so that's how he hired personnel. So intuition, yes, the intuition was the old South American saying, think evil and you will be right. Assume everybody's evil, that's it. And the other thing he said, I used to, for intuition and how to know what was good and what was going to generate money, is just look at the numbers coolly. Do not use your emotions for anything. Don't hope for the best. Always calculate for the worst. And if in the worst conditions you get good numbers, it's probably a good idea to invest in that thing. And then you bring your personnel that you have chosen and put them to work in that. Because the truth, normally, he said, falls a little bit in between the worst expected condition and your best hope. Truth is always somewhere in between. And I believe that that's true after all these years, So intuition, as he made the decisions he made, yes, it's intuitive because he repeated it and worked on it all the time. Now the question for you guys is, what have you done repeatedly and it has proven that it happens and it works for you constantly? Do you tend to have really good lasting friends in your life? Do you have very long lasting friendships? Ironclad people, because you never know people until you give them power after all. But if you have them, that means you're a good judge of people and character, because it's very hard to have great friends. And great friends is summarized as the following. If you have a great friend, you are rich. You are either rich because you have a lot of money, or that person will go wherever you tell them to go to do whatever you need them to do. And that person will not ask any questions. They will just go. Absolute loyalty. If you can create one friend like that, then you're a good judge of character. Most people in the world don't even have that. Most people in the world will never have that. So if you can do that and have one friend like that, two friends like that, in general terms, you can call yourself a good judge of character, and that's a trait that you need to develop and use for your decision making in the future. Another example of intuition, if your analysis of anything, like I used in a previous example that I used about the electronic art shares because of my knowledge of what I do. I love soccer and I love and I studied financial markets, and I lived in South America, and combined with those three things, I figured out that electronic arts stock will rise increasingly year on year on 2006, 2008, circa up to 2012, even though it has gone out even more and more and more and more and more and more. I knew it. Same way with you. How many times have you predicted something? Have you inferred something that was going to happen? and you were right. And it's just not enough to know that you were right out of a hunch or intuition, which is great. But your hunch and intuition must be logically deferred. That means you must be able to put it into logical forms of deduction. Like I explained in the example that I gave you the other day of the EA shares. I had a thought process that went through it. It was natural, intuitively. It's like, I know this is going to fly. That was my first thought. And then I did the thinking and the logical workaround in my head to see whether I saw that as feasible, because that was my first reaction. You have to be able to put your ideas, your thoughts in logical order after you have your initial reaction. Your gut intuition will tell you where you should go, and then you should do the logical work, the thinking, the logical thinking that is required for you to know if it's going to work or not. And the two of them should pan out and should work together. Your logical deductions plus your intuition, they should be pointing in the same direction. And throughout your life, if you have made many calls, this is going to happen, or these two are not going, they don't work well together, they're going to get separated, or this guy's going to cheat on her, or that guy's going to lose money, etc. And this is not good, or whatever, and all those things that happen. If you're able to make those calls correctly, most often than not, then your intuition, your inner fork for direction is working properly. And we will talk about how to apply it, but this in general terms is how it works. And I hope this example today helped you. And I forgot to be saying this in the last few videos, but as always, all the materials, suggestions, and ideas in these videos are for entertainment purposes only, and no liability is applicable. An F to those who don't believe in your own heart, and those who don't believe in their own ideas. And I hope you all have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe. As always, we're heading towards our 10 subscribers so we can start our project of helping people trying to become rich in a 4-year span. Let's see how that goes. As always, have fun. Truman signing off.